Let me introduce Brian Kelly.
Thank you. Well, thank you. Thank you very much, David. I appreciate the introduction. I'm very happy to be here today, and I want to start by announcing to everybody that today is also my birthday. And no, I'm kidding. It's not. I don't mean that. I just wanted another song. No. Again, I'm very pleased to be here today and welcome the opportunity to speak with you all. You know, we're at a time of very interesting challenges for the transportation sector generally in California. We're also at a time of transition. David outlined the Business Transportation Housing Agency as we know it today, but it's an agency that's going through change itself. Last year, the governor pushed and the legislature adopted a governor's reorganization plan number 2, and that plan had a fundamental and profound effect on our agency. Today, as David mentioned, our agency has 12 departments. We have about 42,000 employees and a large budget, $18 billion. But we're going through change, and I think it's change for the better. Starting in July 1st of this year, we'll be operating as just the state transportation agency with a core focus on transportation policy in California. That means we will reduce the number of departments we have from 12 down to 7, but we will not be reducing our employee count very much. We're going from about 42,000 to 40,000. So we're losing departments relative to housing, corporations, financial institutions, some economic development commissions and boards will be moving to other agencies. And what we'll be left with is an agency with a core and keen focus on the state's transportation challenges. And that means 7 departments, most of which you all know: Caltrans, DMV, CHP, the Board of Pilot Commissioners, Office of Traffic Safety, and we'll be inheriting 2 under the agency umbrella: the California Transportation Commission and the High Speed Rail Authority. And then again, you know, we'll have 7 departments all focused on transportation policy, and the core function of the agency and all that is to try to better coordinate agency response, agency policy coordination, and policy coordination with the governor's office just in the world of transportation. And in a state like California, I think that's long overdue. We have a very large, very complex transportation system. It's the largest and most complex in the country. And cabinet-level focus on that policy and that policy coordination is, in my mind, long overdue and a welcome change for the state. So these challenges are before us. One of the first things that the governor's asked the new agency to take up, and in fact we're going to start the work a little bit sooner than the formal formation of the agency, is developing a new investment plan for the state of California in the transportation sector. We have many, many challenges before us. You all know the freight and goods movement challenges we have. We have broader challenges across the board in transportation generally, just with the maintenance and preservation of our existing transportation system, let alone needed expansion, needed improvements in transit, in roads, in highways. The task is large and the challenge is great, but we are going to take up the effort to use some of the needs assessments that have been done recently and try to craft, using those needs assessments, what are the things that we can focus on and try to complete in the next 10 years or 20 years in our transportation sector, and what it will take to get there from a revenue source and a revenue basis. Try to put that together and develop a 10-year or 20-year investment plan, and that's a core challenge that we are taking up now. One of the key policy challenges in all this is much of our transportation system and much of the foundation that it was built on was constructed and put together prior to our challenges around climate change, and those challenges are real. And so we have to, going forward as we develop our policies and priorities, it's not just about the safety and mobility of our public and the soundness of the system that we now have. It's also putting in place those policies and those investments that can help us achieve our air quality and our climate objectives as well. And so that's a new wrinkle, a relatively new wrinkle in our transportation system, but the one that we'll be going forward on as we develop a broad investment plan. We'll be starting that probably later in March. Will be a first work group meeting. It will be a large work group, and then we'll develop subgroups within that work group to take on specific issues within the transportation sector. And so that work will begin next month. And we'll be looking at all kinds of things that you guys are all familiar with. You know, in 2006, the state of California passed a large infrastructure bond package that include Proposition 1B, which was a nearly $20 billion investment in the transportation sector with general obligation bonds. I'm proud to say in front of this group, anyway, that that bond included really the first major dedicated investment from the state's perspective on in the world of goods movement and trade. And that was both in the Trade Corridor Improvement Fund, that program, and the Goods Movement Emission Reduction Program that was conducted through the Air Resources Board. But those were really two examples where the state took a serious plunge into partnering with the private sector on developing policies and making an investment in our trade corridors and our goods movement facilities in the state of California. 2006 begun that effort, and as we look forward into the years ahead, we're going to work on how we can best continue that effort, and some of that I want to talk to you all about in greater detail today. One of the other things that I should mention as we review where we've been in terms of where we want to go on investment, it's going to be important that we look closely at 1B, which was a complex bond bill that had 12 to 14 different categories of funding in it. It's worthwhile to look at that and see what worked well, what was a good start but could work better. And that includes the investments we made in the Trade Corridor Improvement Fund. That includes the Goods Movement Emission Reduction Program. So all of those areas will be reviewed, the status of those investments, where those are today, and what we need to do to facilitate that kind of partnership going forward. That is all part of the challenges that we have before us as we get to work as the new State Transportation Agency. I want to speak now for a little bit on just the world of maritime in California. Of course, you all know we have the 9th largest economy in the world, and maritime industry is a huge part of that economic strength. It is with that understanding that we work to protect the maritime industry by preserving vital infrastructure and investing in new technology and innovation to see us far into the future. More than 40% of the containerized cargo that enters the U.S. arrives at California ports. Port activities employ more than 500,000 people, generate $7 billion in state and local revenues each year. Governor Brown understands this, and that is why he's agreed to lead a trade and investment mission to China in April to strengthen our California global trade position and forge new relationships with our trading partners. To improve our opportunities for global trade, we need to continue pushing California maritime and freight transportation systems to be more efficient while serving customers. At the most basic level, we also need to protect the investments we've already made by maintaining our existing infrastructure. It's important to note that the core of our state highway system was built in the years following World War II. And I think the greatest sort of compliment you pay those who built it is the level of demand that we still have on that system. California has more cars and trucks traveling more miles every year on that system than any other system in the country. And so there's a lot to preserve and maintain. And the first priority for our investment plan going forward will be the protection of that system. And nobody should miss that the sustainability of that system, the condition of that system has huge impact, not just on car travel and how people get around, but certainly on goods movement as well. We need to protect these investments we've already made by maintaining that infrastructure. And this is not an easy task at a time when competition is fierce for our existing infrastructure and our existing infrastructure is under tremendous demand. We need to continue improving our ports and maritime industry to improve the efficiency of moving goods. This includes basic things like maintaining ship access and loading containers faster and safer. It also includes doing smart things that keep our air and water clean to protect California's natural resources. I mentioned climate and the impacts of climate earlier, and we need to pay attention to those. Rising global temperatures will have far-reaching consequences on California's economy. Rising sea levels, hotter heat waves, and more intense wildfires put our infrastructure at risk. So we can't just move more freight at lower cost, we also have to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and other emissions that impact climate in California. The maritime industry has met similar challenges in the past. By working together to protect our oceans from oil spills and prevent invasive species and ballast water from harming our ecosystems. I know many of you see the state's latest environmental rules and greenhouse gas reduction targets and wonder how the maritime industry will respond and prevail. But working together, I think we will. History teaches us that challenges in this industry can and have been overcome. A couple of examples. After the Civil War, the British shipbuilding industry also faced enormous pressure and challenge. Manufacturers had so depleted the forests that they were forced to seek other shipbuilding materials to remain competitive. So out of necessity, the British started using iron to build ships, but soon expanded those operations after discovering the new materials actually worked better in many ways. American shipbuilders followed this lead, and the center of American shipbuilding shifted to Pittsburgh and its world-renowned iron and steel factories. Similarly, during the gold rush, the San Francisco Bay became so overcrowded with moored vessels that ships could not reach wharves to unload cargo. Ships were constantly going adrift and even colliding into one another. So the shipping companies banded together and worked with local government to find a solution. The Legislative Assembly District appointed a harbor master in 1849 with the power to control the position of vessels, promote free and open passage for all ships. The town council also passed a law so the harbor master could issue fines to anyone who refused to comply with the orders. By 1852, the bay was clearing and commerce was moving. The point here, of course, is that the maritime industry has undergone major transformations in the past and emerged stronger and better than before. And that's exactly what happened in the 1950s when Malcolm McLean introduced the container system and revolutionized the entire maritime industry. Events from the past should give us the confidence that this industry will not only survive, but again transform itself and meet the challenges of this time and this era. Innovation has been the key to keeping the maritime industry growing. What is the next innovation that will transform this industry? In truth, we probably don't know yet. It probably hasn't come here yet. Things like cold ironing and new fuel sources will pale in comparison to the remarkable innovation that will come in the years ahead. Last year, for example, the governor signed legislation to allow the Department of Motor Vehicles to establish regulations allowing self-driving or driverless cars to travel California's highways in the future. That technology could lead to major innovations in our transportation system. We also have a high-speed rail system that is months away from breaking ground, creating thousands of new jobs in the Central Valley. The implications of this project on moving cargo in California is probably not fully appreciated or realized at this time, and I'm very interested to see the prospects for that. Our ports are also tackling problems through innovation. The ports of Long Beach and Los Angeles have clean air action plans that reduce pollution and allow our ports to grow. The Port of Los Angeles has a program giving financial rewards to ocean carriers that use cleaner technologies, and companies are participating in that program and getting paid for their efforts. This year, San Diego's NASCO shipyard just sold 2 container ships powered 100% by liquid natural gas. The point is that the conversations we have here today are about solving real problems and real challenges that we have in the transportation sector. California can have clean air and water and a prosperous economy. Together, we can achieve the goal. We tackle the problem of oil spills and invasive species together, and that is how we'll tackle the problem of global climate change. I urge you to engage in these issues in the days ahead and help improve the maritime industry and protect the environment. The need for cooperation cannot be overstated. It was cooperation that led to the development of the Goods Movement Action Plan that was jointly issued by the BT&H agency and Cal EPA in 2007. That plan helped identify 70 projects included in Proposition 1B and the Trade Corridor Improvement Fund. In addition, there are many other local grant and public-private partnerships totaling, with local grants and public-private partnerships that are totaling $7 billion in freight projects, where 1B was the sort of catalyst investment for those projects. Prop 1B also funded ARB's $1 billion Goods Movement Emission Reduction Program. That program has now made available $590 million in grants to replace or update nearly 300 diesel trucks. Those innovations removed 2,000 tons of particulate matter and 60,000 tons of nitrogen oxides from the air last year. In 2009, ARB funded $59 million in grants to install shore power equipment at 25 berths at the Port of Long Beach, LA, and Hueneme. According to the ARB, shared investments in cleaner technologies have already reduced the level of diesel soot at our ports. In port operations between 2005 and 2007, diesel soot emissions had been reduced by 50%. MAP 21 launched the federal bill. MAP 21 launched another important conversation in California about how to make freight systems operate better. We are forming a freight advisory committee and writing a freight plan that will guide California as we invest in infrastructure to protect the environment. We'll have a better freight plan if everyone contributes, and I encourage you to do so. We're also working with CARB, Air Resources Board, on the Sustainable Freight Strategy. CARB will host a symposium in April to focus on technology to make California's freight system more efficient. It will also host a series of public meetings. The goal is to help the state meet its emission reduction targets and maintain international competitiveness. California is also analyzing state and federal data to identify highway routes and freight facilities that should be part of a 30,000-mile federal network, and that should be, and we hope would be, included in the next federal transportation bill. Finally, I want to say again that we are on target in reorganizing the Business Transportation and Housing Agency. Starting July 1, we'll streamline our operation to focus solely on transportation. The new Transportation Agency, as I mentioned, will have the 7 departments, all with a core focus on transportation policy in the state. The work that the agency will do, and the work that we'll have to do working with our sister agencies like CARB, the only way we'll be successful is if we have participation from all of you and all the other stakeholders and parties that are affected by transportation policy in California. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. I thank you for your time, and I look forward to working with you all in the days to come. Thank you very much. I'm not sure if we're doing questions. Do you want me to?
Yeah, do we have any questions?
This could be easy. Oh, go ahead.
Is there any effort for a new Prop 1, a new 1B type proposition?
Sure. The question was whether or not there's any effort going on for a new Proposition 1B, a new bond package. I don't think that, let me answer it this way. I think what the transportation system needs the most is an ongoing stable source of revenue for transportation investments. That, in my mind, is not necessarily general obligation bonds. And so I do think we're going to do work on an investment plan, and we need to match revenues to that plan. I don't think the first choice is through bonds. It's important to note, too, and I think it's important that everybody in this room understand, that in California right now, the GO bond that we are paying off, that debt service, is being paid for with transportation revenue. And today, about 13% of our transportation revenue is paying that bond debt service. That's money going to debt service, not going to projects. And it was important to do 1B, and a lot of those projects are very good projects for the state of California and for our economic development and employment. But there is a cost with debt service, and I think our preference is to try to find a pay-as-you-go funding source going forward. So that's what we're going to attempt to do. Yes, sir.
Sure. Jim Hausner. Thank you. The freight advisory councils, just a plug here for the ports, not only the container ports, but the mid-size bulk cargo ports, both north and south. How are you going to accommodate their needs as you move forward with the recommended freight advisory council? And then separately, are you going to make some recommendations to the governor for appointments, nominations to the federal freight advisory council?
On the second question, I'm going to have to get back to you on it. I'm not sure where we stand on that right now. On the first question, the Freight Advisory Council is being formed. Caltrans is taking the lead on the formation of that. It's a very inclusive committee at this point. I think it is so large, in fact, that much of the work will be done through subcommittee processes as we dig into various parts of the logistics or trade sector. But that work is going on now in terms of formalizing that committee. It is, as I said, very inclusive. The ports are a key part of that, as is ARB and other representatives in the industry. You'll be hearing more on that very soon through the department. And I should mention, too, I don't see him here right now, but a special advisor to me at the agency who's doing a lot of work in putting this together is Ben Dialba. Ben, are you here? Why don't you stand up, Ben, just so everybody knows who you are. Ben is doing a lot of the work at the agency in formulating that Freight Advisory Committee, and I encourage you to talk to Ben about that as well. Okay? Anybody else? Last chance. Take your shots. This is it. Okay. Wait.
In looking at alternative funding, what level of consideration are you giving to public-private partnerships?
Well, you know, if there's any area in the transportation sector where public-private partnerships are ideal, it's this one. You know, it's not lost on certainly on me that the what was historic about the 2006 bond package was we designed the Trade Corridor Improvement Fund to sort of be the public side of a public-private partnership, where we were hoping there would be investments coming from those who profit from the industry to assist in improving the infrastructure. So I think this is an ideal place for that kind of partnership. I also think that we'll be spending some time in the work groups that we're formulating on the broader question of the right role for public-private partnerships in transportation generally. There's nothing off the table as we come into this conversation. And I actually think there may be places where it's ideal and a good thing to put together. What's important to me, and I think important to the state, is that we're able to show with utilizing and partnering with the private sector that we can always continue to point to the public benefit of doing so. And that's what I think is our key objective as we go down that road. But there's open-mindedness for sure on how to structure that.
Hi, you'd mentioned the MAP 21 process and the designation of a primary freight network. What's the process that the state of California is using to submit recommendations for what would be included in that primary freight network?
I believe that's being, some of that's going to be put together through the Department of Transportation. I'm not sure exactly. I'm going to have to get back to you on exactly how they're doing that. But I know that the nominations will come from the department to the feds. But I'm going to have to get back to you on formally how best to nominate those and who the contacts are. I can do that through working with Tim or Jim or anybody else, but we'll make that available. Okay. Yes.
Art Erickson with the Sailors Union of the Pacific and a member of CalMITSAC. In terms of the advisory committee makeup, I'm a little concerned about how big it is. Mm-hmm. And having read the interim guidance on the scope of work and who should be on it, are you considering going to the, let's say, associations, like, for example, CAPA, for nominations, if you will, to the board, or the California Labor Federation, for example, for the labor people? And that may you may not wind up with such a unwieldy body, and the work will, because you know it's a ticking clock.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. You know, the challenge when you work in the public sector and you're putting together an advisory committee, informal panel of any kind, is always, you know, on the one hand, being as inclusive as you can to make sure everybody can feel like they're participating in that process, while at the same time making sure you can get the work done. And we are starting big, I admit that. And I think likely on the broader transportation funding question we're going to have, we'll also start big. And we'll see how it goes. The other nice thing about the advisory committees and the informal advisory committee is you can make midterm adjustments as you need to. And we may need to do that, but I think the starting place is let's be as inclusive as we can. Let's try to structure it to get the work done under the timelines, and let's see how it goes. And then let's be open-minded to make needed course adjustment as we have to.
Secretary Kelly, John Coleman, Bay Planning Coalition. Are you going to be advocating to the governor at all that he support H.R. 335, the RAMP Act, which would return so much of the dollars that are generated from the California ports, hopefully back to the California ports to help the maritime industry?
Candidly, I'm not familiar with H.R. 335, so I don't know the answer to that right now, but I will, we'll look at that, and the idea of returning to the source when you have the state of California with 3 of the 5 largest ports in the country sounds right. But I have a rule that comes from my 17 years of working in the legislature. I never comment on a bill without having read it. So I need to dig in on that one a little bit more before I formally advocate anything. Okay. Anything else? Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you.